What the finance minister said in an exclusive interview to NDTV yesterday is important, where she said that Indian markets are resilient against FII shocks in this conversation. And more on that, on what she said, what the data tells us with Alex now.
Absolutely, Tamanna. In fact, let's start this conversation, which is not, I must point out at the start, anything that is new. But then with the latest comments by the Finance Minister, apologies for that, it puts certain things into context, and we'll show you the data of that. But first, let's listen into what she said to Vasudha Venugopal just a short while back. This is only a slice of that conversation, remember, but it has to do with foreign institutional investors. Listen in.
In general, I think Indian stock market has had less volatility compared to the global markets. And the shift from, let's say, fixed deposit or post office saving to the retail investments, either through mutual funds or demat accounts directly, I think is a healthy trend, because people are now benefiting from the transparent ways in which companies, the listed companies, are disclosing their information. When they disclose the information, people do understand that well-governed companies are up there performing well and they can give good dividends. And as a result, even small investors, irrespective of the risk that the market poses, are coming in on the back of good information flow. It's a good trend. In fact, that has also served as a cushion when FPIs and FIIs flow out of India. There is no huge shock because these people are there to absorb the shock. It's a good, healthy trend and it should continue.
Indeed. So it's a trend, and in fact the numbers point to that trend. To talk about this in a little more detail, I've got Muralidhar Swaminathan joining in. Murali, so let's first talk about that data, because it's very stark and it's very clear. What have you picked up? And we're looking at data from April of last year, and it's very powerful.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very powerful trend that we have noticed. This has been there for almost more than a year. You've been tracking this very closely, Alex. But what stood out was the finance minister coming out and making a statement on this, which is very big. It's very rare for a finance minister for a country to come and talk about how domestic investors are cushioning this market. Let me slightly go back to, let's say, from 2000 to say 2000, about 2010, 2014, 15, every time FII sold, the markets would crash.
Yeah.
So it was seen as hot money. People would say that, look, FIIs will come, they will dump, they will go away. So every now and then you would have seen that kind of a trend. And that was because the mutual fund industries and the domestic market had not taken off. So over the last 2-3 years rather, slowly it's picked up. One very important number I will start with, Alex, is that during May, FIIs sold roughly 22 to 23,000 crores.
Yeah.
Now, how much did the domestic institution put? Almost double, 41,720 crores. So that shows the might of the domestic institution. Just imagine if the domestic flows had not been there, you would have seen the Nifty going down below 20,000.
Yeah, and in fact, yesterday we hit 23,100. Yes.
Now, that is just only one number. That number will come up on your screen. So let me take this to the year 12-month picture or 13-month picture. Since April 2023, FIIs put in 2 lakh crores, okay, net of selling and that kind of figure. DIIs, or the domestic institutional investors, put in 2.5 lakh crore, of which mutual funds have put in 2.03 lakh crores, or 2 lakh crores. Bulk of the contribution has come from mutual funds, and the mutual fund investors are retail investors spread across different regions of the country.
So would you say that if you, and I hope that we can pull up the monthly data as well, because we've gone monthly all the way back to April of 2023, and you will notice certain months, Murali pointed out May, where you've seen 23,000 of net selling by foreign institutions. You see January of 2024, where there's a net selling of 25,740 crore rupees, at which time that was matched by domestic institutions. Go back to October of 2023, where you see selling of 24,500 crore rupees. Equally, there were domestic institutions that bought as much as 28,254 crore rupees. Now, I would hazard a guess, and I'm pretty sure that the data will match that, Murali, is that anytime there has been a sell-off, there has been infusion of funds by retail investors through mutual funds and domestic institutions. And so would you say, therefore, that opportunities have been lost by foreign institutions over the course of the last year?
No, so you can interpret two ways. You can say that FIs may have lost opportunities, but they also gave opportunity to the domestic investors to step in. If they had not sold, see, typically what they would focus on stocks with good float in the market, good pedigree, long-term investments, but what they may have missed out is the small and mid caps where the story is unfolding now. That's where the domestic institution, you know how much money has flown into small caps and mid cap stocks.
Yes.
So that's where I think the ownership of the Indian industry is there. So that gives you a very strong pillar and that widens the market as opposed to, let's say, 10 or 15 years back, you would look at only a basket of say 50 or 60 stocks. Today, you're looking at a basket of solid 300 to 400 stocks. I mean, if you look at one of the biggest small cap funds, which is about 45,000 crore, which is your Nippon India Mutual Small Cap Fund, it must be having some 120 stocks.
No, much more than
or
that.
much more than that.
Yeah.
Now it must be much. So that gives you a very clear picture that people here are discovering stories. Investors are discovering stories. There is more research, and the governance issue, of course, is there for companies, which I think there is a lot of transparency. You know, the regulators have also worked towards that one. But the important point to come back to your question, maybe now the FIs are missing out on the opportunity. Maybe they stayed out for a little too long.
Okay. To close this conversation, do we say therefore that despite the volatility that we've seen in this week and in the last week, do we say that we're more protected on the downside? Would you draw that analogy?
No, that's a little too early to say that, and we should not stick our neck out because this conversation is not about the upside or downside here. This conversation is that whenever there is a fall, there is cushioning, there is support from the domestic investors, and typically you would know better, every month if SIPs come in, you know, roughly about 20,000 crore or 18,000 crore on an average, the figures for the May month are not there. So if you're looking at 41,000 crore invested so far by domestic institutions in May, it's the money that came in the last month, you know, so the reserves are there. So for May, you will know what kind of monies are going to come. I think that will come in June, and I think there is enough firepower, enough cushioning for the market to withstand any shock coming from FIs.